The labyrinth has a long history dating back several thousand years. This presentation will be a brief overview of the various forms the labyrinth has taken over time. Labyrinth designs have predated religions and can be found on rock formations, metal objects, ivory, clay tablets, walls of buildings, and a range of walking labyrinths over time. First, we will understand the difference between a labyrinth and a maze, and then explore the types of labyrinths. Next, we will journey through time and view labyrinths across the world. During our tour, we'll reflect on an ancient Greek myth about Theseus and the Minotaur, and the contemporary use of the labyrinth will be discussed in the video that focuses on labyrinth and mutual aid group work. Labyrinths and mazes. There is a difference between the labyrinth, here we have an example of the Shark Cathedral labyrinth, and a maze, which is on the right. The labyrinth is a single path, or as they call it, unicursal path from the entrance to the center, and then the same path one would take back out. But the maze, on the other hand, is a complex puzzle, what they call multicursal, where there could be dead ends and having to return, and one can get lost in a maze, whereas in a labyrinth is a clear path from the entrance to the center and using the same path to exit. And there are different types of labyrinths in terms of the design. This is the more classical or Cretan design. The Shark Cathedral labyrinth is the one here. And this might be construed as a Roman design in terms of the labyrinth, although there are other types of Roman designs that are square. Next, a few examples of labyrinths from different places. The walking labyrinths are an example. This one is in Sedona, Arizona, at the Lodge at Sedona. This is at a Unitarian church in Sedona. I'm not sure, this is a European lawn labyrinth, a rock labyrinth from Scandinavia, I believe, here. And then we see various kinds. This labyrinth here is kind of a cloth or canvas labyrinth, which is a walking labyrinth that it's portable. This looks like it's a labyrinth on a coin, a Greek coin, which is the oldest perhaps of the ones we're looking at here, although the Arroyo Hondo one in New Mexico is fairly dated as well. That's this one here. This is an older one, much older one. And then the Man in the Maze from Southwest United States is an example. And then this one is from a cathedral in Europe as well. Then over time we find patterns on rocks and other forms of natural features. Then the types of labyrinth we talk about here and in our other videos is there's the walking labyrinth, which are examples here. This one is in Orlando, Florida. I'm not sure where this came from, but you'll see that this is kind of a paver labyrinth, and this is made out of stones. These are walking labyrinths. The hands or the finger labyrinth is this is more of a contemporary labyrinth. This is a labyrinth etched on a rock that probably was not large enough for one to walk with their fingers, but this is an old labyrinth, many hundreds of years old. Perhaps not a finger labyrinth, but to get you an idea of what designs, there's many designs that you'll find on various choices you can have with walking a labyrinth and selecting the one you find more comfortable. Next week is well, we have a bracelet here from the Ukraine dating back to 13,000 BCE. The one etched in stone here is probably between the Paleolithic and Neolithic. It's difficult to get a fix on exactly what the years were, or the ranges of years for these two periods, but the Paleolithic is the older period, which would be known as the Stone Age, where most things would be found in terms of stone and etchings on bones, perhaps used with flint. And then there are many rock etchings and pottery that come later, which would be in the Neolithic period. Again, you still have stone and art similar, and then this pylos grease etched into some kind of clay material that would be from the Bronze Age, perhaps, or later. Next, we find a 5,000-year-old, what appears to be a walking labyrinth in Russia. This is an interesting labyrinth in that an anthropologist in the 1970s suggested that there's 30 of these labyrinths in this area, which makes it a quite high concentration at 5,000 years um, from 5,000 years ago. Someone suggested that these may have been used to trap fish because the water level was allegedly much higher at the time. However, later research has debunked that idea, and perhaps these look more like they were walking labyrinths from what one can see. But an interesting kind of design. Those were in Russia, and there were 30 along that coastline. It's just off the shore there. Then the 15 circuit labyrinth here would be found in Sweden, Finland, and Estonia, which were used by fishermen who walked the labyrinths before going out to fish because they believed the symbols would protect them, ensuring wind and a good catch. There's a more full-size labyrinth in Finland and Estonia than anywhere else in the world. There are more of these 15 circuit labyrinths in that area. Here's kind of a seed pattern of what that might look like. Some were built by the Vikings. However, most of them were built by fishermen from around 1500 to 1900 CE. Again, walking the labyrinth before going off to the sea was seen as a propitious kind of behavior. This 15-circuit labyrinth was found in Tibble, Sweden. It's approximately 2,000 plus years old, as another design of the 15th circuit, which is a rather large labyrinth with which to negotiate. This looks like it may have been a stone pattern which was actually laid on the ground and walked by individuals. The next slide looks at the Minoan legend of the Minotaur, which involves a labyrinth that is really a maze from the information shared in the myth. However, it's a story about Queen Pasiphae, who slept with a bull sent by Zeus and gave birth to the Minotaur, which was a half-man and half-bull figure, as you see back here. King Minos was embarrassed and had a labyrinth built in the palace at Knossos, and Minos required that 7 men and women be selected each year to try to kill the Minotaur. Theseus, who we see here, decided to be one of the 7 and promised his father that he would kill the Minotaur. Theseus met Princess Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos, and she fell in love with him. To help him, she gave him a thread and told him to unravel it as he went through the labyrinth. That way he would be able to find his way out after killing the monster. Theseus followed the thread out of the labyrinth, having killed the Minotaur, and celebrated with Ariadne. This is a ancient myth which is still resonates with people today. The Nasca Lines in Peru, which people are somewhat familiar with, can be seen from the sky. These are what the designs look like over that area. And you'll see here a labyrinthine design. This isn't a labyrinth, but it's labyrinth-like. These are 1,500 years old, where people would walk in, around, and the circle. And then there's the large bird, and then there's these ones with labyrinthine-like tails, which you will see here. These were allegedly some of the more recent history walking labyrinths, although others predate them by many years. Here we have a series of old labyrinths. India, 250 BCE, again before the Christian era. And in Goa, there's like rock labyrinths. There's this one. These are kind of classical-like designs. Then there's a Roman labyrinth. Here is an example that was built in the 165 years, again, BCE. And then the 1300s in the Christian era, the Chartres Cathedral Labyrinth, which was constructed perhaps about well over 800 years ago. And so these are some other kinds of designs. As I said, we're kind of looking at designs over time and various types. The Hedge Labyrinth comes in many designs and approaches. This is a this looks like a 15-circuit one here. And then we have a lawn design here. And then this very large labyrinth, it's a hedge labyrinth in this area. Some designs show up um, around that time in later Europe as well: Russia, Middle East, North Africa, Turkey, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Southeast Asia, and North America among certain tribes as well after the European arrival in the United States and the Western world. And then the last slide here, there are many walking labyrinths that we find around the world. And the ones here, there's one in Tucson, Arizona, another in that general area of the United States. And this is a European labyrinth, which is set up with lights for a night experience. This video has been only a small sampling of many forms and places where labyrinths or labyrinth-like objects have been found. There is a great variety of shapes, places, purposes for using the labyrinth, and I just wanted to provide a brief introduction to give you a flavor of the fact that labyrinths go back as far as the Paleolithic period, and there have been many religiously oriented labyrinths in terms of Christianity and other religions in more recent times. I wanted to share the two encyclopedic resources, which I think are the finest I've crossed paths with, are Kern's Through the Labyrinth, Designs Meanings Over 5,000 Years, and Labyrinths, Mazes, and Mazes, A Complete Guide by Soward. These are really outstanding, and I highly recommend them for people wanting to do further research. Also, if you want to purchase labyrinths, this is a place where I tend to buy most of what I buy from vendors. There are walking labyrinths, finger labyrinths. He has canvas labyrinths he sells that people can walk on, and a myriad of finger labyrinths and labyrinth-like objects. I hope you found this enough to interest you to further research labyrinths and their types and uses. Thank you.